A rural California town sued to keep a prison open. Judge rules Newsom can close it. Newsom being the governor of California. Rural. The California Correctional Center in Susanville, a rural town whose residents depend on jobs at the minimum security state prison to sustain their economy. The California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation may immediately resume shutting down a prison in Northern California. A judge ruled this week dismissing a lawsuit by a rural town that sought to stop the closure. The state was supposed to close the California Correctional Center in Susanville by this June, but it has remained open because the town, where local officials say they face economic devastation if they lose more than 1,000 prison jobs, sued the state last year. And a Lassen County judge issued a preliminary injunction halting the closure while the case moved through the court. In a ruling issued Wednesday in Lassen County Superior Court, visiting judge Robert F. Modi dissolved the injunction. The legislature and the CDCR both have had and have expressed policy reasons for closing prisons. There is a paucity of inmates, and the population of inmates is in continuous decline, and the resultant reductions in required staff and physical plant make it fiscally imprudent to continue to maintain all our expensive prisons, Moody wrote. The wisdom of such legislative or political policies are not and have never been the province of the courts. The state announced the prison's closure in April 2021, causing widespread panic in long-shrinking Susanville, the only incorporated city in Lassen County. More than 45% of employment in Susanville is at the California Correctional Center and the adjacent High Desert State Prison, local officials told the Times. In its lawsuit, Susanville argued that when the state announced the prison's closure, it violated the California Environmental Quality Act because it had not conducted the proper reviews of the shutdown's impact on the town. The state began the environmental impact review process in January, but tucked into this year's budget, which Governor Gavin Newsom signed June 30th, was a trailer bill that says California law exempts the closure of state prisons and juvenile facilities from review under the state's environmental law. So that's right in there. The bill says the California Correctional Center must close by June 30th, 2023. In his ruling, Moody said that while the trailer bill was legal, it was the kind of legislative maneuver that has an unpleasant odor about them, to be sure. And ultimately, he wrote, the question of the public satisfaction or lack of it as to all these matters is electoral, not judicial. Meaning, you want to remedy it? Then go to the voting booth and vote. That's where you can change it. In a statement Thursday, Susanville City Administrator Dan Newton said the City Council will be briefed by the City Attorney and will hold a special meeting as early as Monday to determine the next steps. The city's primary concern is for CCC employees and their families, Newton said. Moody's decision was celebrated by those who say closing the 59-year-old California Correctional Center, which needs millions of dollars in repairs, is the morally and fiscally responsible thing to do. Throughout this entire litigation, the prisoners inside CCC have been treated either as revenue or irrelevant. Shakir Rahman, a Los Angeles-based attorney who filed an amicus brief signed by about 100 men incarcerated at the prison, said in a statement. Advocates see the decision in this case as a decisive victory, the statement said. In the amicus brief filed this Sunday in support of the closure, the incarcerated men said the prison is crumbling. Rainwater pours through the ceilings, they wrote, and some prisoners resorted to using soap to seal leaks in their cells. Toilets, they said, don't flush and are filled with green algae. And when the Dixie Fire, the second largest wildfire in California history, burned last summer, a few miles outside town, the men were not moved from the facility. Even as electricity and water were shut off, smoke filled their cells, and they had to cover their faces with wet towels to breathe, they wrote. Modi declined to consider the amicus brief. As California's incarcerated population declines, other prisons will be considered for closure, state officials have said. The dual vocational institution in the San Joaquin Valley city of Tracy closed last September in this year's budget. The Newsom administration said it was committed to right-sizing California's prison system to reflect the needs of the state and could close 3 more prisons in addition to the California Correctional Center by 2025. Brian Canada, Deputy Director of Californians United for a Responsible Budget, a coalition of groups dedicated to reducing incarceration in the state, said in a statement that Newsom has shown a lot of leadership, but now more than ever, the state needs a concrete plan to close prisons included in the January 2023 to 24 proposed budget. Decisions about which prisons to close next need to happen soon. So here it is. You see why people complain, and they say, all this stuff about what's going on in San Francisco, no cash bail and all this stuff, and criminals roaming. Well, people want people to be locked up so you can provide jobs. This is what it's all about. And when you look at words like rural, anytime you see rural, people in those regions are usually Republicans. That's how it works. Not that I'm picking on them, but that's how it usually is, People live in these rural areas. They tend to listen to like AM radio because AM radio cuts through everything, like storms, distance, and that's where you have most of the talk radio. Like when Rush Limbaugh was alive. You go out to these areas, you can get him out there in those areas. And there's a lot of right-wing talk radio in America. And the AM band, that's how it is. You don't get as much FM because FM is not going to carry out that far. But AM will, and so that's where you pack with the talk radio. And people who live in these areas, they constantly talk about crime and criminals. and how to deal with it. But here they are benefiting from the criminal system, the criminal justice system, whereby spend money in prisons and they don't care. And look at this particular prison in Susanville. Rainwater comes in, prisoners have to plug the leaks with soap. Toilets don't flush. Toilets have algae, green looking algae. But they don't care. Why would they care? As long as they provide jobs, that's what matters to these people. They don't care. They don't care at all. As long as they're jobs. So they went to court, and the judge said, "Well, this is this has to do with electoral, going out and vote. It has nothing to do with judicial. The judicial system can't correct what the legislature has set forth. You want to change it? That's how you do it." And Northern California is very, very different from the southern parts of California. They tend to be more liberal in their politics and so forth. They tend to be much more hardline, more like in line with Trump. Yeah. I didn't do a check because I just came upon the article, but I bet you if I would have checked this area, I bet it heavily voted for Trump in the last election. That wouldn't surprise me at all. Yeah, because California is like that. It's a big state, and some part of that state is very, very red. Red. Like Texas or Oklahoma or Utah or so forth. That's how it is. But anyway, the lesson here is that prisons are used to provide jobs, okay? People don't give a damn about whether they lock people or not. They want people locked up because it brings an income. You can hire people. You can hire more guards. You can hire more people in health care. You know, like nurses and doctors. You could pay them to work in prison. And at the end of the day, they go home. They get a check and they get overtime. That's all really that matters to people. Nothing else. Getting a check out of other people's misery.